PhD students to define humility. Not one of them had defined it as like false modesty or self-deprecation. They had all defined humility as a byproduct of confidence. People who are fundamentally secure and confident in themselves can be quiet, and with quiet comes the ability to listen. So it's just really interesting how confidence and security breeds humility, and then humility sets the conditions for great leadership.
Oh, that's such a great insight, right? If you want to help people on your team build humility, work on their confidence. Blake Hall, you, for me, are one of the embodiments of what makes America America. That someone can live a life of service and then continue to live a life of service and also be a successful entrepreneur. Now, no one knows what we're talking about. So it's probably worth just taking a little step back and
It's a high bar.
And we should tell people who you are and why I would say, you are this wonderful embodiment of these great values.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to rep America now, which is a big burden. But no, I'm a third generation soldier. I grew up on military bases all around the world, and went to college on an ROTC scholarship, not because I wanted to serve for a career, but I just wanted to pay back a little bit to this country that's given me so much. And then 9/11 happened during my sophomore year while I was at Vanderbilt in Nashville, and it ended up changing the arc of my life.
So 9/11 happens, you're a sophomore in college. What goes through your mind?
It was one of the most unifying moments in American history. Like, remember the American flags everywhere, and people wanted to find a way to kind of give back and to support this community after we'd been attacked. For me, I knew that instead of going into a peacetime military, because it'd been pretty sleepy for a while, that we were going to go to war. And I knew that if I was going to lead young men into combat, I wanted to be an Army Ranger, and I wanted to, play with the varsity, so to speak. And so, fast forward, I ended up commissioned in 2004, got my Ranger tab and everything else through Ranger School, was a rifle platoon leader for 5 months, and then ended up leading a platoon of scouts and snipers in Iraq in 2006, 2007, running after high value targets.
Just out of curious, how many deployments?
Just one, 15 months from June 06 to September 07. So,
all right, that counts as many. That doesn't count as one.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, if you ask how many months over there, I'm up there.
That's a better question rather than the number of employment. 15 months is serious.
A long time. Yeah,
that's a long time to be in a war zone. How long were you in the Army? How long were you in the service?
7 years altogether. So 4 years active duty, and then I spent a few years in the Army Reserves working with European Command, and then resigned my commission in 2011.
Your path is, it's not the typical American entrepreneur path. It's a life of service, and now you're running a business as a service, which I love. That's what I love. That's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you. And I'm curious who your business role models are, because the traditional business role models aren't necessarily the best human role models.
For business leaders, I really looked up to my dad and to my grandfather. My grandfather was a war hero in World War II, command sergeant major, 66 months of combat, which is crazy. And my grandpa had he had 3 rules, and the first rule was never think that you're better than the men that you lead, because both my dad was enlisted and went to West Point, was an officer. I was the first soldier in my family to go straight, to be an officer. So that first rule was never think that you're better than the people that you lead. The second rule was, if you have a choice of units to go to the one with the worst reputation, because when you leave, you can see the impact that good leadership makes. And then the last one was never associate yourself with logistics, which I'll have to explain the story behind it. So, kind of funny. he was on the front lines in the Alps, and the guys he was fighting with, everyone had like frostbite and frost nip, just frigid. And he got, haul detail, like, we're going to go back to the rear headquarters, whatever. So got in the truck. And as they drove farther and farther back into Italy, they started to see the newer cold weather gear and then the fur-lined parkas and the gloves until they were back at headquarters. And all these guys, who have all these creature comforts, have the latest and greatest, while everyone else like doesn't have any of that in the Alps, and they're freezing. And it left an indelible mark on him. And so I kind of took that lesson and said, listen, like you need to serve those who need it most first. Before you take care. It's this. It's leaders eat last.
Well, it was the newest thing. I mean, we gotta take the new stuff, the new fur-lined stuff before we send it up front. But I love this. I love these lessons, by the way. And I wish, oh my God, I mean, anyone who's in business, who aspires to be any kind of decent leader, that your grandfather's first lesson is never think that you're better than the people that you lead. You may have talents that they don't have, but they guaranteed have talents that you don't have.
That's right.
And I think that one lesson alone, if more people could obey that one or just learn that lesson, you don't even have to study leadership. You'll just naturally be better at it if you can have that kind of humility. And by the way, that doesn't mean false humility, right? Oh, shucks, Bob Gaylor, the fifth Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, has my favorite definition of humility. He says, never confuse humility for meekness. He says humility is being open to the ideas of others.
Love it.
And it's not oh, shucks, no, I'm not that good. You can have the biggest freaking ego and think you're all that and a bag of chips. But if you also think greatness of those of the people on your team, and you are curious about their ideas, you're doing just fine. And by the way, that's being humble.
So what's amazing about this too is that I was at Clay Christensen, the famous Harvard Business School professor. Like his last lecture, he relayed the story at the time when he thought he didn't have a lot of time to live, where he asked 6 Harvard PhD students to go off into different corners of the room that they were in and to define humility. And when they came back, not one of them had defined it as like false modesty or self-deprecation. They had all defined humility as a byproduct of confidence. And I found that insight to just it instantly rang true. That like people who are fundamentally secure and confident in themselves can be quiet. And with quiet and humility comes the ability to listen, which is what the Master Sergeant came from. So it's just really interesting how confidence and security breeds humility, and then humility sets the conditions for great leadership.
Oh, that's such a great insight, right? So if you want to build your humility, or I would take it a step further, which is if you want to help people on your team or your kids build humility, work on their confidence. Catch them doing things right. Show them how smart they are. Point out their talents.
Yeah. Now that I'm, farther along in my career, and I think the principles are still true, that you need to be confident and secure in sort of your domain expertise and what you bring to the team, but you need to continue to show vulnerability and being self-aware of where you're actually like quite weak and need help. And so, like VPs and down are kind of, functional experts. They're expected to know their domain well. The C-suite is different in that it's the cross-functional alignment and mesh where you have to work together as a team across, not down. And what I've just noticed about the executives who do the best are the ones that ask for help quickly. And I think a lot of it comes from that confidence and security. They're confident and secure enough in what they're good at that they're able to be vulnerable in areas where they're not good at. And I think folks who've maybe been over-titled and over-promoted lack that sense of security, and they're just worried if I show any vulnerability or weakness, there's just a thread that's going to start getting pulled, and it's going to unmask me as a fraud. And it's really complicated because even really good, talented people have imposter syndrome where they just need to get over themselves. But then there are folks who maybe need more development and are in a position that's a little bit over their skis. And this is why it's so difficult, sometimes to lead at scale and to to try to get teams to trust each other and to be open with each other, because everyone is kind of dealing with their own stuff at any given point in time.
Good leaders are the ones who ask for help the quickest.
Yep.
Confident leaders are the leaders that ask for help the quickest. I know that I learned that lesson the hard way, which was, as a young leader, lying, hiding, and faking every day of my life, because I thought that having all the answers and being right was what gave me my credibility to be
Yep.
in a position of leadership. The problem was in over my head and incapable of solving the problems, didn't even understand the problems to solve them. And only by being battered was I forced to ask for help. And what I discovered was I was surrounded by people who wanted to help me and were willing to help me. They just didn't think I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the hardest things for a veteran to do is to acclimate into civilian life for any host of reasons. And whether people love the service or hate the service, one thing I know about all vets is they all miss the brotherhood and the sisterhood, that they struggle to find that again in the private sector. Where did your life go after you left?
Well, there were a few moments that stuck with me, right? Like when you're on, when you're in combat, you get like 2 weeks to come back home and to visit your family and everything else. And my leave happened to be in the Christmas and New Year's of 2006, and I went back to New York City, and I was in Manhattan, and I really just had a hard time like relaxing, because I was carrying the lives of 32 men that I was responsible for, and I'd met their dads and moms, and I'd met their wives and kids in some cases. Some of them were too young to have kids, and I just had this pit in my stomach that if anything happened to them while I was gone, I would just never be able to forgive myself. And I'll never forget, it was just late night in Manhattan. I was watching all these people like walk into bars and like laughing. And I was just like, no one really cares. And this is the city that got attacked, and like we're over there fighting, but nobody really cares. Not the way, that I cared about my guys. And so I honestly just wanted to go straight back. I didn't want to be in the States while, my team was over there. And you're right, that camaraderie when you leave is really difficult. And I think like a lot of veterans, the sense of purpose and the locker room and the camaraderie, we took down a vehicle bomb network that had killed thousands of civilians in 2 weeks before we left Baghdad. And that was the last thing when I had my platoon together. I was like, you'll never see the faces of the folks who survived the vehicle bombs that never went off. But what we did together, if you look at the stats of what that terrorist cell was doing, and now that it ceases to exist, like you saved a lot of lives, and it's something to be proud of. A few months later, I'm a student at Harvard Business School, and, it's like you're 26, 27 years old, and the biggest decision you have to make is like what bar to go to on Friday night. And in some ways, psychologically, it's like going from being maybe 60 or 70 years old, where you're confronting your own mortality, your friends are dying. And all of a sudden you're like a time traveler, you're like back. And so for me, I wanted to find the same sense of purpose and camaraderie that I felt while I was wearing the uniform. And I was really, struggling to find that. I knew that I couldn't stay in the military because I didn't feel any strategy behind it from our political leaders, but I was really longing for that sense of purpose that I felt when military service is done right. Soldiers exist to protect the weak and the unarmed, and we get to fight bad guys and blow stuff up at the same time. It's kind of like the ultimate, combo in its ideals, and I was just trying to figure out what to do with my life.
Did you apply for jobs after business school and sort of struggle to find a company did you struggle to find one where you felt like you belonged?
Well, I think I went to McKinsey for a summer, and the folks at McKinsey were wonderful to me. I mean, brilliant people and everything. But I ended up working on this engagement with a telecom company, built a pricing model. First phone call, it saved $17 million. And I went home that night, and I didn't care. I feel like maybe it greased the squeaky wheel of capitalism like a little bit, but I I didn't find meaning in that. And I talked to another veteran I was serving with, and I was like, listen, like, I don't think I can do this. And so, that really is what catapulted me into entrepreneurship, even though I had no idea what I was doing, lawn mowing business, lifeguard, getting shot at in Iraq. And I ended up declining an offer to join McKinsey and to start, a company where I felt like I could make people's lives better.
So the company you started is the company you are now the CEO of, which is ID.me.
Yes.
I think the best way to describe the value of this company is to talk about the origin story. So how did you come up with the idea? Like, where did this idea come from? And obviously that'll reveal what it does.
Yeah, I think there were a few twists and turns, but the root of it, as we got out of like prototyping and kind of figured out the real issues, is that veterans suffer from identity theft at about 80% higher the rate than the typical American, according to the FTC data. And then there was all this goodwill from retailers, from nonprofits, from the government to help military families, but they had to go in person in order to prove their identity. And so you'd see crazy stuff like at the Outback, they would give free blooming onions to veterans on Veterans Day. And you'd have a veteran showing their paperwork, which has their social security number on it, to a stranger to get a fried vegetable. And it was just like, that's a terrible trade, So I said, gosh, like, there's got to be a better way here where we can help you get your fried onion and not show your social security number to somebody you don't know. I know a little bit about identity from my work overseas, where we were doing a lot of stuff with telecom networks. And so just jumped into it. Never dreamed that as we pulled the thread back, it would lead to where it is today. But that was really the initial sort of wrong that we set out to right.
And so let me say it back so that I'm clear. So when a veteran, for example, goes to your site and signs up for ID.me, there's all kinds of things that verify their identity, that they are who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then for any company that has ID.me on their website, for example,
yeah,
that vet can go to any website that has ID.me, and they don't have to show a social security number, and they can instantly be verified as being who they are and be eligible for whatever thing they are offered. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, and that's right. Like Apple uses us for their military and veteran discounts. And before, you'd had to go into an Apple store. And I'm like, hey, that's kind of hard to do when you're in Afghanistan or Iraq or just deployed overseas. It's kind of inconvenient in general. But they just didn't have a tool that would help them keep that offer secure. And so they were confining it to their stores because they didn't want to be defrauded by folks.
It's well-intentioned. Otherwise, anybody could pretend they're a veteran, and it defeats the purpose of taking care of those who've taken care of others. So, I mean, it's perfectly legitimate. And the only way to truly verify somebody is if they come in, or as you found the solution, especially as most people are buying things online anyway these days.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's the old thing where like there's only, tens of thousands of Navy SEALs, but on the internet, there's like 6 or 7 million. So you're running into that problem.
Exactly. Now, what I love about this is you looking to continue to find that fulfillment from service, like as opposed to just helping companies make slightly more money. That you leave the service, you look to build an entrepreneurial life in some way, shape, or form, trying to serve. You find a very real problem for the people you love and care about and with whom you served, so that they will be taken care of, not miss out on benefits, be able to take advantage of other offers that are offered to them from a commercial world. And that's like all great companies. It actually became something like, Amazon only imagined being an online bookstore.
Yeah.
Netflix only imagined ever being sort of a video rental company. They didn't imagine owning studios. Like, these things came later. And so you would have been very satisfied serving the veterans community and having this niche little company doing its thing, except something happened.
Yeah, 2 things happened. One, the brand said, hey, it's it's not just military, it's first responders, it's nurses, it's teachers, it's students. And then at the same time, the federal government had this program running out of the Department of Commerce. And they said, why are we making Americans create logins at different government agencies and paying a credit bureau over and over again to verify the same person? Why don't we just verify them once and then let them take their login and their verified data with them? And so as I began to look at the federal government, I'm like, well, pretty sure veterans want to be at the VA. But then I'm like, well, students need to be at Department of Education and federal student aid. Senior citizens who get discounts from retailers, in retirement at Social Security. I'm like, holy cow, the opportunity is to be a digital wallet. The same way that your physical wallet works, or that my military ID works, that I could take it, to Lowe's and get a discount on home improvement products, and I could go over and get access to a government installation, that you should just have a digital wallet that works the same way. But it was, I wish I could say that I had seen that coming into it, but I just saw the Social Security blooming onion problem, and was just, focused on that. And as I got deeper into the space, I realized the problems go way deeper than just like the Outback scenario that I described. An institute at Duke University last year released a report that data brokers who have aggregated, all of our personal data, they sell our military service personnel data to overseas entities for pennies, which is crazy. I think like treasonous in some ways. And so, when I saw that, oh my gosh, not only is it inconvenient for you to have to manage different logins at different websites and to have to reprove who you are for high risk services, but the industry behind it is really creepy and does things that I don't view as ethical, to replace that ecosystem with a user-centric model where your data is yours, your login is yours, and we get to solve the annoying password problem that, you can go wherever you want to go with like minimal friction with that one login. But we're also getting rid of these faceless data brokers who sell and trade and use your data in ways that you likely wouldn't approve of.
Yeah.
That's become like our mission, today.
Can you tell me a story of something you did in your military career, whether it was a mission you were a part of, or it doesn't even have to have been a combat related, just could have been something that you did that really, when you look back at it, you loved being a part of it. And if every experience you ever had in the military, or indeed for the rest of your life, was like this one thing, you'd be the happiest person alive. Something specific that I can relive with you.
I think the day I'm most proud of was a firefight we got into in Mosul, where a combat support hospital in Mosul was being shelled by insurgents. And it was our second patrol of the day. It was dusk, so we were pretty tired. And as we rolled out of the base, just heard like whoom, 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 whoom on the support hospital. I was like, that's battery fire. That's what we call a time on target, where all the shells land within 5 seconds. It's difficult to do and is the mark of like professional, in this case, mortarmen. And so we took this turn. A suicide car bomb detonated in the alley behind us, and then tens of fighters like stormed the alley. Heard the machine guns on the tower open up, and later learned that they were trying to take American prisoners and then execute them and get some money from their Middle Eastern benefactors in different countries like Saudi. And what I had done after I called it in is I had a map, and I just we were like 50 meters away from the point of impact. Like as we were driving by the support hospital, I drew a radius of the max range of the tubes, because I could tell they were 82s. But I circled this field. So we like went over this bridge on top of the Tigris, and I just remember looking out over Mosul, and every single base and police station in the city was under attack, and it looked like Star Wars. There were just green and red tracers like lancing through the air and then spiking up into the sky as they would hit and like split off. And as we took this turn to the southern field, we got into a pretty intense firefight. There was no close air support. It was all small arms for the most part. Um, and and that was a crazy day. We fought in 3 different directions, but by the grace of God, like all of my guys like made it through that day. It was a miracle. And my commander, when I got back, he just said, he's like, Lieutenant Hall, tell your guys they saved at least 20 Americans from being, critically injured and saved their lives. And so that was like, that was one of the coolest moments of my life. Like I'm very cool is maybe a weird way to describe it, but I'm so proud of them. But it was really a culmination of like listening to the collective wisdom of everyone in the unit. And what I get to do, which is an amazing privilege as a leader, is if I can soak that up, bring it to bear in a way that can drive impact. And so the nurses for the next few months that we were in Mosul before we went down to like Lake Tartar and Baghdad and then later Karbala, they sent us care packages like every week. My platoon sergeant was Catholic, and they got him a rosary that went from literally like his forehead down to his shins that he hung as the biggest rosary that I've ever seen in my life. And it was an amazing thing to be part of a team where we went to the bullets because other Americans were in danger instead of moving away from them.
Thank you for sharing that. Of all the remarkable things you got to see and do, what was it about this one experience that makes it stand out from all the others?
Well, I think when you're a platoon leader, especially in combat, if you make one bad decision, you could cost people their lives. When you're the only American platoon out in the entire city, I mean, Mosul's got 2 million people, and there are nurses that are being shelled by these, huge 82 millimeters, 120, like the kill radius is like 30 meters plus, that there's like a 90% plus probability that you'll be killed or wounded if you're above ground and that shell impacts. I'm just so grateful for what my dad taught me, what my soldiers taught me, that I was able to make, I think, the best educated guess of my life. In a way that saved lives. So I think for me, there's other stories, that are impactful and stuff, but that was definitely, I think, the best day of my life as a military leader. And so it sticks with me for that.
The thing that I appreciate about the story you told is a lot of people would say, I was proud I made the right decision, right? And what you said is, I was proud that I learned the lessons from my grandfather. I was proud that I listened to my guys and took the collective intelligence and the collective experience of this group and was able to make the right decision that saved lives. And what I love about that is you recognize that we're all only as good as our ability to learn and the people who are willing to share with us.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of makes a very, it makes a very high standard. Surround yourself with people who know more than yourself, who have a point of view, who are willing to speak up, and creating an environment in which people will tell you what they think. But you didn't think you're the smartest guy in the room. That's the most important thing here.
Never.
Right. I mean, you say it as if it's an understood, and it's not, because I think a lot of people in leadership positions think they have to be the smartest guy in the room. And the great irony is by knowing you're not the smartest guy in the room is the thing that made you smart.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful ironic nuance.
Yeah.
Which is you actually are the smartest guy in the room only by recognizing and practicing not being the smartest guy in the room.
Life is full of those paradoxes, and it's what you were just talking about, in that like the biggest companies, like they had to focus small to get big. Whether it's Uber with affluent riders and black card drivers, Facebook with students, Pinterest with Midwestern moms, Red Bull with, like adventurous, like young men, and Red Bull gives you like if you focus really small, you can get really big. And that's just a different like counterintuitive truth that once you kind of get it, you're like, and the world starts to unlock a little bit for you.
And no one proves that more than you. And it's true in the company you're building. You focused on a small group of people, your veteran brothers and sisters who just needed some help. And your company is growing because it turns out we all would like to have our identities protected and follow us wherever we go also. Blake, you are an absolute inspiration. Thank you so much for coming on. I so appreciate it. I've learned a lot.
Courage is not about bravado. It's about staying calm, which raises the question: how do you stay calm when everything in your body wants to panic or freak out? Well, Lee Carlson knows a lot about staying calm. A former soldier, she is now one of the world's most accomplished freedivers. She holds numerous records, can hold her breath for 7 minutes, and can dive down over 260 feet on one breath. Net, Lee is a certifiable badass. But that's not the main reason I wanted to talk to her. It's what freediving has taught her about managing fear and stress. And it turns out the lessons she's learned also work above the water. Something as simple as changing how we breathe can help all of us manage our stress and fear. This is a bit of optimism. Lee, thank you so much for doing this. I'm such a fan of yours. The thing that I find astonishing about your story is how you got into this. When I think about freediving, the thought of holding my breath and going straight down in the ocean is a horrible idea. And just to be clear, your record is you have gone down 80 meters, which is insane. That's 240 feet.
Yeah, something like that.
That's not like the bottom of a pool.
That's a very, very deep pool.
It's a very, very deep pool. And you just hold your breath and go straight down and then come back up. What made you want to do this in the first place? Because it's a very scary sport. It also has a lot of casualties. It's a dangerous sport. What made you want to get into this? How did you get into this?
That's a good question. My mother asked me that the whole time too. But thank you for the very nice introduction. I think I felt limited in life because the ocean I was so in love with it and at the same time afraid of it. So I wanted to explore those fears of, going into that deep darkness where you can't see the bottom and just curiously explore what's down there. And in the beginning, it freaked me out completely. I was so afraid. And it was like I had so many excuses in my head. But then when you get past that, you get past your mind's limitation, there's complete freedom. And being down there, it doesn't feel like you're lonely. It feels like you're in complete solitude.
Ooh, a lot to unpack there. So I've had the feeling where I've gone to the bottom of a pool and run out of breath, and the panic to get to the top of the pool, to get to the air, is real. And this is, in your words, in your life, shallow, no matter how deep a pool I was in. When you come up from a deep dive, does that panic of running out of air happen and you learn to control it, or do you never get to that point?
It's almost the opposite. It's like the closer you get to the surface after you've been down there in the darkness by yourself, it's like you don't really want to return to the surface because it's messy and there's noise and there's, your brain turns on again. So when you get up there, it's almost like you're being rebirthed and then you have to, be in the normal life again. So it's almost like you're stepping out from your real life and you get some peace. And then, like, physically what's happening to you when you dive is that your lung, they compress. So it's actually very comfortable.
From the pressure of the
Exactly.
The water pressure.
Exactly. So just by being at 10 meters depth, around 30 feet, right? Your lungs are half the size which means that if you take one breath and you go down to 10 meters and you have half the volume, your brain perceives that as you have a lot of oxygen molecules. So down there, I don't have the urge to breathe at all, unless I do something very stupid and waste a lot of energy and oxygen. So when I go up again, after 10 meters, my lungs expand, and that's where I get the urge to breathe again. So the last 10 meters is the most dangerous part of the dive.
And do you have that feeling of, as I said before, do you get that feeling of, I'd like to take a breath now, please, like in those last 10 meters?
No, I don't get that in depth in the ocean. I can get it sometimes when I'm in the pool, because you're so close to the surface. So it's like your brain understands that you're actually closer to the air.
And just so that people understand the incredibleness of your record, you hold the record for holding your breath, right? The Nordic record, is that correct?
There's different disciplines. So the world record that I have, it's an unofficial world record where I dove under the pack ice in Greenland. So it's ocean ice. So it's below the freezing point of fresh water, because it's salt water. So it's -2 degrees. So I dove
Celsius.
Celsius. I dove under the pack ice and the icebergs. And then I have Nordic and Swedish records in in the pool, where you go back and forth, and also for depth, where I go straight down vertically.
And that's the 80-meter record.
Yes, that's a training record, a personal best. So far, I have the World Championships now in October, so let's see how that goes.
And how long can you hold your breath when you go down, when you do this 80-meter dive? Like, how long are you under the water?
You usually calculate 1 meter per second. So you go down 80 seconds-ish and then up 80 seconds-ish.
So how much, do the math for me? That's 2 minutes.
A bit more than 3 minutes.
A bit more than 3 minutes. But you can hold your breath for 7, right?
Yeah, if I lay completely still. If I don't move at all.
Right, because you're kicking your feet.
Exactly, you're moving.
You're using energy.
Exactly.
So just, like, I can sit really still and maybe go for like a...
Can you?
Yeah, fair point. I'm trying to think how long I've held my breath underwater. Over a minute. But what I find astonishing is you can go 3 minutes while kicking your legs.
Yeah.
Okay, change the subject slightly.
Okay.
About this magical life that you live. So you live in between Stockholm, Sweden, and in Mauritius.
Yes.
You bounce between the two.
Yes.
Stockholm because I think work and life is here, and Mauritius because...
Oceans.
Oceans,
dolphins, whales.
And so I've seen, and for anybody who's curious about this stuff, the magic of what you do, go look at Lee's Instagram, and you'll see images that will blow your mind of you swimming with sperm whales every single day.
Almost, yeah.
And what's interesting is you can't go scuba diving with sperm whales because the bubbles from the scuba will scare them away.
Yeah, it disturbs them.
So, but if you hold your breath,
yes,
as your Instagram demonstrates, you can go right up to them and socialize with them.
Yeah, usually they come to you. They check you out. They use their echolocation. It's like a clicking sound. And then they kind of invite you to the pod. And they're very playful and empathetic and curious, especially the calves. So they usually come straight up to you. And I mean, they're like 5-ton, calves. So it's like quite big creatures.
How big are the big sperm whales?
Between 15 and 25 meters. The females are a little bit smaller. They're like up to 15 meters. And the males are huge.
25, so 75 feet.
Yeah.
For a big one.
Yeah, and up to 30 meters for the males.
30 meters?
Yes.
So 90 feet.
Yeah, huge. It's like a big bus.
So how many times a week will you go hang out with the whales?
2 to 3 times a week, normally, in the mornings. Before my coffee.
Do you think they recognize you?
They do, yeah. I have one of my friends, her name is Jade, is a sperm whale calf. She recognized me instantly, and she always comes up and tries to nibble my fins.
How do you know it's the same whale? I mean, I hate to say it, but like,
well, you
how do you tell the difference?
Well, they have patterns on their belly.
Okay.
And they also have scars on their fins. And the big ones that can dive deep, their main food is giant squids. And the squids have long tentacles. So when the whales eat them, they fight back. So if you look around the eyes of a sperm whale, you will see huge scars. And sometimes they're all fresh, like bloody from fighting with these giant squids.
Wow.
You know the horror movie 10 to 15 meter long squids that lives down in the deep. They eat them.
So you do recognize them, and they recognize you, and they come straight to you. You said your buddy Jade,
Yeah.
which is a 15-meter whale,
Yes.
comes to hang out with you, and always comes to you. So you recognize this whale that always comes to you. How long can you hold your breath when you go diving with the whales?
I usually dive down to around 10 meters with them, and I stay for 1.5 to 2 minutes. So as long as a dolphin.
That's what dolphins, they hold their breath for 1.5 to 2 minutes?
90 seconds. Yeah, a dolphin hold their breath for 1.5 minutes. And a sperm whale hold their breath for 1.5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And the funny thing with sperm whales is that they have their lungs is 1,200 liters by the surface. And when they dive down to 2,000 meters, where they hunt for these squids, their lung size is 6 liters-ish, which is the same size as yours when you're sitting here.
Wow, from the compression from the water pressure.
That's the pressure. Yeah.
Wow. So, are there dolphins out there as well?
Yeah, spinner dolphins and bottlenose dolphins.
So you can dive with the dolphins for the same length of time that the dolphins dive?
Yes.
Can you take a breath that quickly, though? Because they can take a quick breath and go down for another minute and a half. You can't do that.
Yeah, that's why I sleep with the tape on my mouth to buffer the CO2. That's the main reason.
How much time do you need at the surface to hold your breath to go down for 1.5 to 2 minutes?
5 to 7 seconds.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah. It's the exhaling, just get the CO2 out and then you dive again. And I do that a few rounds.
And so you can go diving with dolphins?
Yeah, I play with dolphins.
The images of you on Instagram with the whales I find incredible, and then you go sometimes see them when they're sleeping, and they're all vertical.
Yeah.
There's like this whole pod of whales just hanging out in the middle of the ocean vertical.
Yeah, it's like a forest of whales.
Which is the craziest image.
Yeah.
And the images of you diving under the ice.
Yeah.
We have to talk about that. Now, diving under the ice, as if free diving isn't stupid enough.
Or cool.
Or cool.
Stupid or cool.
Yeah, it's a fine line between what's stupid and what's cool. Why on earth would you dive under the ice when if there's anything that goes wrong, you actually cannot get to the surface? It's not going straight down like free diving. It's going in a hole, swimming horizontally to another hole.
Yeah.
And so if you get the calculation wrong, if you go in the wrong direction, if you run out of air before you get to the hole, you cannot get out.
Yeah.
That is truly horror movie stuff, getting stuck under the ice.
Yeah.
What possessed you to choose to do that? And it's freezing frickin' cold.
Yeah, it's very cold. It's beyond cold.
I mean, you were in Greenland when you did this, which is notoriously cold.
The coldest, most non-friendly place on this planet.
So what possessed you want to do this?
I was terrified of getting stuck under the ice from when I was a kid.
By the way, everyone is terrified of getting stuck under the ice. This is not unique to you. Like some people are afraid of heights, but not everybody. Everybody's afraid of getting stuck under the ice. Yeah. Okay, so you were afraid of getting stuck under the ice as a kid. You live in Sweden, so that's a real thing.
Yeah. The thing was, it was preventing me from living to my full potential, because when I became an athlete and started competing in freediving, the stress, the carbon dioxide that accumulated, it brings you not only excuses why you should go up to the surface, like, why are you doing this? This is super stupid. But it was creating so much stress in me that I was coming up to the surface. That was part of my emotional blockade, because I was imagining all of these different ways that I could die on, where even if I was in super warm waters in the Philippines diving, or if I was in the pool in Eriksdalsbadet, which is the national arena here in Sweden, I was imagining having a layer of ice that was preventing me from coming up to breathe when I was down there. And I was stressing me out so much that it was preventing me to reach my full potential, right? So I figured that I have to face this fear. So I had the possibility we have been shooting a documentary for about 1.5 years. And I told these guys about my fear and my challenge. And they were like, hey, we want to tag along and film that. And if you fail, that's actually good for the production.
So if you die,
not dying
under the ice,
like it's okay if you don't. We don't want you to push to your maximum limit. We want to follow you when you meet your challenge.
right?
And obviously, I told them like I cannot imagine myself failing. I have to visualize myself actually making it. Otherwise, it's the athlete
It's like
mindset.
every athlete has to imagine getting the gold, right?
Yeah. So in March this year, we went to Greenland, and I had trained myself to have like an overcapacity with depth. I could dive to 70 meter plus. I could do more than 200 meters horizontally in a pool. I could hold my breath for around 7 minutes, and I could sit in 0-degree waters without a wetsuit for more than 10 minutes in several rounds. But when you come to that hole in the ice, that void, I was back as a kid again, looking down in the ice. And I was like, I have no clue what's down there. And that fear became a curiosity in my search for freedom. And I did the dive, and it was so hard. It was the hardest thing I ever done in my life. And everything that could go wrong went wrong. The documentary will show. But afterwards, I was at complete peace.
What went wrong? So you go down into the ice.
One of the things that went wrong was that we couldn't get to Greenland because it was iced hurricanes. So instead of getting 12 days, we got 2 days. So I just got 1 day of doing like a quick recce. And then the second day when I was doing the actual dive.
Recce meaning reconnaissance.
Reconnaissance.
Take the girl out of the army. You can't take the army out of the girl. Yeah.
So the second day, my exit hole had frozen. It was like 0.5 meter with pack ice. So we had to do another exit hole, but I couldn't see that one because we had so short of time. So I didn't really know where my exit was. And the wind was much stronger, and we had to abort the dive. And the hole that I was sitting in, it got frozen the whole time because of the cold. So I had to sit with my fins, and just stare up the ice because it was getting frozen.
Just waiting, it would just freeze over while sitting there.
Yeah, it was that cold. And the thing with Greenland is that it's pack ice, and it's super thick. And then you have icebergs that's moving around. And since it's salt water, it's -2 degrees. So it's actually below the normal freezing point for fresh water. And all records so far have been done in freshwater because it's the safer and maybe saner way to do it. Because the ice is the same. It's like a root.
It's the
Same depth.
same thickness.
Exactly.
From one end to the other
Yeah.
in freshwater. If it's 4 inches thick, it's going to stay 4 inches thick
Exactly.
everywhere. Whereas seawater,
it's like a mountain underneath, and you don't know what's down there, and it's moving. So we couldn't have any safety lines. So I didn't know where I was going. I couldn't be attached.
So you
to
can't
anything.
attach a line from one part of the hole to the other where you hold with your hand,
No.
so you can go in the right direction.
No, because everything was just moving.
It's
So I
moving,
wasn't
and
going
it would get stuck in the mountains.
Exactly. And if I was too
the
buoyant,
crevices.
I would get stuck in a crevice. Or if I was going too far below the icebergs, I would start descending. And it was 500 meter deep, 500 meters
And that's
depth.
because of your wetsuit, right?
Yeah, the wetsuit was a 7 millimeter wetsuit. So when I go down, it decreases,
Right.
and I lose my buoyancy super fast compared to a 3 millimeter wetsuit.
So if you're too buoyant, you get stuck in the ice and
Yes.
you die. Mm-hmm. If you go too deep, you lose your buoyancy and you will sink
And die.
and you'll die.
Yeah,
If you go in the slightly wrong vector, you'll die.
yeah,
If you go in the right vector, but the ice moves, you'll die.
yeah,
If you run out of air at any point, you'll die.
yeah.
There's no safety line. So tell me again why you did this.
Yeah. I wanted,
and let's be clear, there's a reason the Guinness people, the reason this is an unofficial record, spoiler, you do it.
Yeah,
The reason this is an unofficial record is because the Guinness people will not endorse something this dangerous because they don't want people to keep trying it because someone will get hurt.
yeah. I don't recommend anyone.
Right. So
doing it,
this can never be an official record because the Guinness people won't do it. But the fact is, you did it.
Yeah.
How long was the dive?
Around 75 meters.
75 meters horizontal.
Yeah, yeah. Under 2 icebergs and a tunnel.
And a tunnel.
Yeah.
How long did it take to get from one end to the other?
Around 1.5 minutes.
Did you panic?
No, I don't really remember the dive. I don't remember anything. It was like the strongest flow state I've ever had in my life. But as soon as I surfaced and I took my first breath, everything just came over me like, holy shit, what did I just do? Because I was convinced that I wasn't able to do it because of the conditions. I knew that I was super strong and agile.
You know you could physically do it.
Exactly.
But you didn't know if the conditions
But the conditions
were,
were just like crazy. So what I did was that I aimed for my safety diver that I knew was like 10 or 15 meters away from the hole. And she pointed vigorously up towards the hole where we attached the line with a strobe that was blinking. And in the last second before I was going to her to get the regulator, and I was like, I'm going to pass out. I'm too drained. Then I saw the strobe and I was like, fuck it, I'll just go for it. And
so you were actually in and out of air. You were actually looking at her saying, I'm going to fail. I'm just going to go take a breath of air from the diver.
In my head, you can't see it in the film,
right,
like when they're filming. But in my head, I was like, okay, I'm going to her. But then I saw the hole and her hand, and I was like, ta-da, there it is.
So it's like you think you haven't gotten to the finish line, and then you realize it's just around the corner.
Exactly.
Can't wait to see this film. So you went into this because you were afraid of the dark ocean. You were afraid of the depths of the ocean, and you did this to face your fears.
Exactly, yeah.
There are other ways to face fears. Was it specifically a fear of the ocean?
I perceived the darkness and the depth as a scary void. So I was also afraid of heights. Like I didn't want to be in, very deep waters where I couldn't see my feet. Or sorry, my feet, the bottom. My feet on the bottom, maybe.
So now, how has your life changed? How you had this fear. You talk one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is you don't talk about it like a sport. You talk about it like a yoga practice. You talk about it like a meditation practice when you talk about basically, which is an athletic event. You don't talk about records and depths. You talk about mind and release. You talk about calm. I'm curious how you have changed personally. Like, what kind of person was Lee before you started freediving, and what kind of person is Lee now?
I see freediving as self-medication. Like, training for me has always been self-medication. And then I found this amazing medicine that works for my life in general, both on a physical, emotional, and a mental level. So the Lee that started freediving 2018, 6 years ago, I was still in the army then. I was working at the headquarters. I was very much into my career. I was like full on. Everything was, work, and I didn't have any real place to ventilate. And then I found this fear of mine that I explored. And I wouldn't say I became obsessed with it, but it became a passion really, really fast.
And I think something that becomes a passion really, really fast is what we like to call an obsession.
You could say that. Well, it's still where all of my money is going, for fins and wetsuits and travel. So yeah, maybe it's an obsession.
So what kind of person were you before you started freediving? Were you anxious? Were you I know you were ambitious. Like, were you sort of, high strung? Like, what kind of person were you before? I'm so curious about the transition.
I was definitely anxious, and I know now from my therapist, I had layers of PTSD from, both from the military and life in general, and that's something that I had to work with in order to dive deeper. So in the beginning, I was high performing in depth, really, really fast, but then I reached a certain level or depth where it was like, an invisible wall, like I couldn't get deeper.
What depth?
I got to around 60 meters.
And you couldn't go past 60 meters?
No, it was
you kept
a
running,
wall.
You ran out of air every time?
Mentally, it was like I couldn't. Yeah. I stopped wearing my dive computer that tells me the depth. And it was consistently at 60 meters. That's also physical because it takes a lot of time to get adapted to the depth. Basically, every cell of your body has to be adapted within the mammalian dive response that we have to be able to handle this pressure. But it was definitely not mental, but emotional. So I got to a point where I felt like I couldn't breathe when I was at surface because I had so much pressure in my chest from things that I didn't deal with in life. So that's when I had to take, not 1 step back, but 100 steps back, and you start to work with it from within. And as I did that, the emotional and the mental perspective of getting different tools, it didn't just improve my diving, but it also made me what I would say a better human being.
What did you do to treat yourself to go beyond the 60 meters?
The first thing I did was to start to be aware of my inner being, the awareness of my breath. To be able to hold your breath, you have to be able to breathe properly. And the breathing, it doesn't control everything we do, but you can basically tell your brain and your whole system to be afraid by breathing in a stressful way, although there's no stress. And that's where we tend to get stuck today in society, because we're not taught how to breathe for life. You're taught how to breathe for diving and breath holding, and you're taught how to breathe as a soldier, like when you're shooting, to get the right shooting position. But a lot of people, including myself, I was creating unnecessary stress by breathing the wrong way, where I already had a lot of stress in my life.
So what is breathing the wrong way? So obviously breathing is autonomic. I don't think about it. My body breathes because it needs to breathe to survive. So if it's automatic and autonomic, like, how am I breathing the wrong way? Why is my breath causing me stress and yours no longer does? Like, what start with, why is my breath causing me stress?
Yeah, you can breathe to be alive and you can breathe to be living, right? And what happens with the stressful breathing, that's completely natural if you're being chased by a lion, which we usually are not in today, right? But it's a very shallow mouth breathing. And it goes to our chest, and it activates the sympathetic nerve endings in the upper part of our lungs. Parasympathetic breathing, or the state, is basically the opposite. So you take breath with preferably your nose, by using your diaphragm, the breathing muscle. And some call it belly breathing. Mm-hmm. But it's basically not an aware breathing, but you exhale longer than you inhale. And that's usually the opposite of what we do today. We're very good at inhaling, but stress is basically accumulated carbon dioxide. So the breathing that we use in freediving is a very aware state of how much carbon dioxide we have in our body.
So give me an example of this shallow inhale with a long exhale.
Yeah, sure. Start by relaxing your shoulders and then create an awareness.
Well, that's going to take about an hour.
And then inhale slightly with your nose, just like a small puff. And then you can exhale with your nose or your mouth. And then you take a half an inhale too. And then... So super relaxed.
So I'm doing this short inhale through my nose,
yeah,
and then a long exhale. And I'm pushing the breath in, not into my chest, but into my belly.
Yeah.
So I want my belly to expand.
Preferably your rib cage. Like if you put 2 fingers on the lowest part of your rib cage.
Which I'm doing, yeah.
Yeah. You should feel that when you inhale, they go down and outwards a little bit.
Oh, wow.
Because we can do belly breathing by just using our abdominal muscles.
Right. Which is what I learned.
Yeah, so that's one way. But if you have the rib cage moving, then you know that you're using the diaphragm.
Diaphragm. Interesting. Okay, so the short inhale, long exhale.
Yeah.
And do I push the air out or let the air fall out?
Passive exhale. Yeah.
So let it fall out.
As long as it's a little bit longer than the inhale. And that's basically the key. Like no matter what state you're in, you don't have to be diving or shooting for that matter. As long as you take a longer exhale than an inhale, that's an aware breathing that will take you into a parasympathetic and relaxing state.
So do you use this just in your day-to-day when you have stress?
Yeah, all the time. Like I don't sit in silky pants in a yogi position. I do it at the bus station or when I'm walking or when I'm talking. It's like, where's my shoulders? Okay, they're up, relaxed. How am I breathing? And then inhale with the nose, because the thing with nostril breathing, now it's getting a little bit nitty-gritty here, you have nitric oxide in your sinuses. So when we inhale nitric oxide, like through the sinuses, they expand the blood vessels. So the gas exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide becomes more efficient, and it also dilates your vessels.
So put in layman's terms.
So if you breathe with your nose...
Better to breathe through your nose than your mouth.
In general, yes. Especially if you're talking a lot. Let's say that you're a speaker. Let's say that you do hypothetically. Yeah. It's really good then to compensate with nostril breathing. You don't have to, not talk or not breathe with your mouth, but also when...
Though some people might suggest that is a good strategy.
So nostril breathing with your diaphragm, take longer exhales than inhales. That's like breathing for life in general, I would say.
Okay. So let's pick up where we left off before. I asked you what Lee was before you started free diving and who Lee is now. So you were somebody who carried a lot of stress. You had anxiety and, as you learned, layers of PTSD, both from combat, the army, and other things in life. Now that you're a champion freediver, but more important, you've learned how to breathe and manage panic and stress, because that's what going to depths is, right? It's managing panic and stress. Who are you now? What kind of person are you now that's different than you were before?
I would say I'm much more in touch with little Lee, the playful part, because the adult Lee that had completely taken over before, because she thought she had to, was very stressed and anxious and was taking on a huge responsibility and being worried about things that she couldn't control. And I think a part of letting your inner child not take lead, but flow in life enables you to deal with things in a more playful and fun and harmonic and peaceful way.
If I met you before,
yeah,
I'd say, what kind of person are you? What would you have said?
Before,
yeah,
I was very much Captain Lee. I was very rigid. It was my way or the highway. I was extremely focused, ambitious. I'm still ambitious, but I'm much more relaxed in letting things be as they are and not worrying so much. There's very few things that you can control in life, whereas breathing, once again, is one of the few things.
This reminds me of Viktor Frankl. You know, Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
And when he went to the concentration camp in the Second World War, he was struck by how all of these people, the prisoners, were all suffering the same experience. But he remarked that some had the will to live and some didn't.
Yeah.
And that's what he realized was we cannot control the world around us, but we can control our reaction to the world. Exactly. And you're taking that a step further, which is we cannot control the world around us, but the one thing that we can control is our breath.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very hard even when I talk about Viktor Frankl to people, I say, we can control our reaction, we can control our mindset. And I think that though that's true, I think it's much easier in concept than it is in practice. Change, just when you're in a bad mood and somebody says, come on, cheer up. Like, that's changing your mindset. And
that's helpful.
All you want to do is punch them in the face when somebody says, buck up, when you're in a bad mood. I think it's very hard to just change your mindset. What you're saying is control your breath, which is something I can actually do rather than just think about.
Exactly.
And so it's basically the same idea. It's the same concept, it's the same philosophy, except it's much easier to practice controlling my breath. Like even just now, what you've taught me, which is take a short breath in through my nose and then some sort of long exhale. Like I can do that.
Yeah.
Or and as you said, I don't have to go take a yoga class to relax after a stressful day. I can do it in the meeting. I can do it in the conversation.
Yeah.
I can just start.
Yeah, and even if it's a small sense of control, it's a mentally huge control. Because you are controlling yourself and your inner environment. And the external environment, it could be a war zone. And that's okay. Because you can't take responsibility for it. And usually you can't do anything about it. It is what it is. It sounds very stoic and almost like apathetic. But in a way, it's the most kind thing you can also do to yourself. Because your own responsibility is taking care of yourself, and therefore being kind to yourself, you can illuminate kindness.
The big lesson that I'm learning here that is pretty profound, which is I always thought free diving was about holding your breath. I always thought free diving was how do you practice breathing so that you can maximize oxygen in your lungs? And I'm sure that's a part of it as well. But what I'm learning from you is it's actually less about the breathing to survive, the breathing not to pass out, but it's really a stress management, that you're breathing for stress management, because if you suffer stress and freak out when you're at depth, you're probably going to die.
Yeah, it's a direct feedback. You will die.
I mean, you'll actually die. Like if you panic at
yeah.
80 meters, at 70 meters, even
No,
at 60
not
meters.
theoretically. You will die. Yeah.
So this is the amazing thing. It's not about how you hold your breath so you don't die. It's how you manage the panic, how you manage the stress so you don't die. And obviously, if you can do that in an environment where you physically couldn't breathe, underwater and at pressure, then the same lessons used above the water have the same impact, which is stress management. And so, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was not so that we can teach people how to go freediving, but how we can learn some of your stress management techniques from breathing. Well, this is what I'm learning now, that we can manage our stress. I mean, I wanted to bring you on just because I think what you do is madness. But what I'm learning is it's the furthest thing from madness. It's probably the most important thing we can all learn to do, which is to breathe. And you said it, there's breathing for living and there's breathing for life.
Yeah, exactly. And even the philosophical part of you can't really inhale more oxygen. You can't increase the oxygen saturation in your blood, because unless you've been holding your breath for 3 minutes or more, which you haven't, what I can see, your oxygen saturation is between 95 and 98%. So when we say that, as you said before, taking a big breath, it's all about exhaling the carbon dioxide. And if you apply that in life, like, you don't usually have to take on more things. You have to deload. You have to let go of things to feel the stress relief. And that's when you can move on, and that's when you can thrive. Because if you don't do that, you're probably fighting unnecessary battles inside, creating stress, choosing stress, instead of choosing freedom and controlling what you can control to be able to thrive where you actually need it.
Now, one of the things that I know that you do to practice nostril breathing, which is a more efficient form of breathing as I'm learning from you, is that you tape your mouth shut at night when you sleep. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that way you guarantee that while you're sleeping, you're only breathing through your nose to help build lung capacity, and also just to practice breathing through your nose normally, right? You're training your body.
Yeah, and I didn't make this up just to be like, it's not something that I girl guessed. I read this beautiful book called Breathe by James Nestor, and he recommended it. And for me, it works really, really well. I would say that I don't snore, what I know. But one part of humans is that our breathing evolution is actually going the wrong way, because we are mouth breathing the whole time. And we're not taught how to breathe for anything, unless you're a free diver. So it's not only the nitric oxide in your sinuses and stuff, but also for us Swedes, in the winters, if you breathe through your nose, the air has a longer time to warm up. So it's easier for your body to deal with the bacteria that actually goes through your nose hair, and then it gets heated up before it hits your lungs.
Because it's true, we have cilia in our nose to clean air. That's what it does. In our mouth, we don't clean the air.
No.
And I know that when we're sleeping, when we breathe through our mouth, we let out a lot of moisture from breathing, and so we dehydrate ourselves. You can wake up dehydrated.
Exactly.
And breathing through your nose, I think, mitigates that. So and let's just be clear, it's not a piece of duct tape here. It's a tiny piece of medical tape, because I know you showed me this.
Yeah.
It's a tiny piece of medical tape that you stick on your hand first to get rid of some of the sticky.
Yeah.
So in case you do panic at night, you don't die.
Exactly.
And then after you rip it off your hand, you just stick a little piece over your top lip and bottom lip.
Exactly.
Vertically.
Have you tried it yet?
I have.
Yeah.
I have. I tried it for a while, actually. I was doing it every night for a while. The thing that I found astonishing about it was, especially as mouth breathers, your nose gets clogged up.
Yeah.
And if I tried to breathe through my nose, I couldn't, or maybe only one nostril. And I remember I remember that's how I was going to bed, and I was putting the tape on. I'm like, I'm going to die because I can't even breathe through my nose. And within seconds, my nose cleared up and I was breathing.
You want to know why?
Yeah.
Because the carbon dioxide that you then accumulate by taking a little bit longer exhale that we usually get when we breathe through the nose, because it takes a longer time to exhale through the nose, it's actually not vaporizing the mucus, but it loosens it, so it's easier for the body to get rid of.
Wow.
So in theory, I'm not saying anyone should try this, but if you actually have a little bit of clogged sinuses, you could try to hold your breath or just breathe through your nose, and the mucus will
loosen up.
Loosen up, exactly.
This is amazing. Okay, let's keep going with this. So even when you exercise, and I know you do vigorous exercise, you'll do cardio or something, and you don't breathe through your mouth. You have learned to only breathe through your nose when you exercise. How do you get enough oxygen in your lungs? I mean, like if you're doing vigorous cardio, how do you get enough oxygen in your lungs just through your nose? I don't think I could, or at least I couldn't get the air out. I might be able to get it in, but out, I need to like exhale hard. But you're teaching me to exhale longer. And when I exercise, I exhale quicker.
Yeah, I mean, it's a transition period. So what I had started doing when I was walking and doing like running, I started using nostril breathing as much as possible, specifically when I was exhaling. And it took me a good year before I was comfortable with doing that. And don't get me wrong, like if I do vigorous, like high intensity workouts, I do have to exhale through my mouth now and then. But for me, lowering the pace a little bit and then breathing the right way by exhaling longer and letting my body to learn how to work with the carbon dioxide, it takes a while, but it's possible. And it is harder because the carbon dioxide in itself is creating a stress. It's the fight and flight reflex that we have in our brain. But also for me, specifically in freediving, the thing that I train the most is my body's capacity to handle the huge amount of carbon dioxide. Because when we hold our breath, it's not the decrease of oxygen that freaks us out. That's not what's getting us the urge to breathe. It's the increase of carbon dioxide. So the better my muscle cells and my whole system gets at being able to buffer carbon dioxide and acid, the better I am in the pool and at depth.
This is a really interesting insight here, especially when dealing with panic and stress and anxiety, which is we think we need to get air in. We think we need to get oxygen in. I just need to take a deep breath. We often say that.
Yeah.
Oh, I just need to take a deep breath. And what you're saying is the total opposite, which is the panic and the anxiety and the stress doesn't come from our desire to get oxygen in. It comes from the need to get carbon dioxide out.
Exactly.
And so really what I need to do when I have stress is not the inhale, it's the exhale.
The long exhale. And thereby the switch from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, from the stress to the relaxed, is the long exhales.
First of all, what's the difference between sympathetic and parasympathetic? You've mentioned it a few times.
Yeah, sympathetic is in the autonomic nervous system. You have the sympathetic drive, not in sympathetic as in being kind.
Right. So this is everything that happens automatically.
Yeah, exactly. We can't
breathing,
control
heartbeat, all that stuff.
Digestion,
blood flow.
And the parasympathetic is the recovering state. And you can't affect the autonomic nervous system because it's autonomic, but we can control our breathing, which stimulates the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So our brain can tell us to be afraid, and we start breathing in a stressful way. But we can also tell our brain that we are afraid by breathing in a stressful way.
Oh, okay. So
it's a circuit.
Okay. So this. Let me repeat this because this is important, right? If there is a genuine reason to panic, like there's a lion chasing you, there's a burglar, you hear a bump in the night, you're afraid you're going to get fired from your job, your body will react in fight or flight. You'll start breathing shallow and getting ready to run.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
But what you're saying is we can also create stress where there may not be any, or we may be overreacting to the inputs that we see. Like we had a fight with somebody, or maybe we did something wrong at work. I mean, let's stick with that analogy. And we start fearing that we're going to get fired, but that's not necessarily because we are, because it's real panic. It's because we start breathing shallow, and our body interprets the shallow breathing as you better start panicking in your mind.
Yeah.
It's connecting the physiological with the mental.
Yeah.
And so if we learn to breathe, what we are actually doing is allowing the mind to say, oh, there's nothing to panic about.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
So you...
Do you know why I like having this conversation with you? Is because you have to learn to breathe and understand all of these physiological and nervous system things based on the actual science, because otherwise you'll die.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the stakes here, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of the well-intentioned, but sort of the space of meditation and yogic and like, though there is science and science-ish around it, some of it's flat out wrong because there's no stakes.
Yoga and meditation they're fantastic tools, but just as you said, you won't die from meditating or doing yoga wrong, but from freediving you will. But it's not, something that we strive for, and even if it's an extreme sport, it doesn't mean that we are taking extreme risks.
And what you have learned to do this is basically you've learned to scientifically meditate.
You could put it that way. That's
what you do. I mean, what you do, I think another way to describe your extreme sport is extreme meditation. You go into a deep, deep meditative state where you have learned to get the carbon dioxide out of your body, how to manage panic so you don't panic when you're 80 meters below the surface of the ocean, 240 feet below the ocean surface.
Yeah. Solitude.
And no panic. The important thing is it's less the solitude and the lack of panic. Yeah. The peace that you feel comes from the lack of panic.
I am passionate, obsessed with making behavior change easy for people. Easy, sexy, fun. I just really want to help people take that first step. And that's why I developed this concept of the hacks. If you're lost, overwhelmed, sick, start with my glucose hacks. Even one cherry tomato, one baby carrot before your next meal is already amazing. Be proud of yourself. Start anywhere. That's the key here. It's getting you in a state where then you can go on to bigger and better things. These are the first place to start.
So I wanted to have you on our little podcast because my brother-in-law announced at the dinner table that he was going to get a glucose monitor just to try it out. So of course, my sister and I were like, all right, we're in. And for 30 days, we did glucose monitoring, and it was absolutely fascinating. And in the course of this, we all became huge fans of yours. How did you start becoming a glucose obsessed? It's not a childhood dream.
It's a good question you raise because I don't have diabetes. Nobody in my family has diabetes. Usually when you think glucose or blood sugar, you think diabetes, right? And I actually never thought this would be my career and this would be what I talk about all day. But it came about through my own personal health problems. So when I was 19, I had a very bad accident. I jumped off a waterfall and broke my back, snapped one of my vertebrae. Yeah. And so you know what it's like to hurt yourself. I had super intense surgery. I have lots of screws and metal in my spine now. But physically, I was fine pretty quickly just because I was young. But what happened is that I started developing a lot of mental health issues. Depression, anxiety, dissociation, panic attacks. I felt like a stranger in my own body. And this lasted for almost a decade. And during that time, I realized at such a young age that if you don't have your health, you really don't have much. And I wanted to feel better. I wanted to heal my brain and my body. And that's when I started a quest to try to understand myself and understand what I could do. And that first led me to study biochemistry in grad school, then to work in genetics. And nothing helped me feel better until I discovered the world of glucose. And a little bit like you and your family, I randomly put on a glucose monitor as part of this pilot study. And it completely changed everything because I saw that the days where my glucose levels were steady, my mental health was better. And the days where I was in this roller coaster, my dissociation, panic attacks were worse. And that's when the gates opened and I became fascinated.
It is absolutely fascinating. My results were astonishing.
My whole life, I've had crazy sort of energy spikes. Like I'm great all morning, and I never take a meeting at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon if I can help it, because I'm useless. My brain doesn't work. I sit there like a lump on a log. Like I'm just the afternoons are useless for me. And I just thought that's my circadian rhythm. That's just how I am. I'm high in the mornings, I'm low in the afternoons, and I come back in the evenings, right? Then we're doing the glucose monitoring, and I'm getting better at understanding how to manage the spikes. And something remarkable happens, which is my energy is steady all day. I have perfectly steady energy. I can work all day. I don't have the peaks and valleys like I used to have. And it has been game changing just from a productivity for one, but also just feeling good, you know? Because when you're tired, everything feels compounded. Your emotions are compounded. Fatigue is a killer. And that afternoon fatigue is gone.
And usually, actually, if we feel crappy in the afternoon, we don't realize that it could be caused by the way we ate at breakfast, right? It's hard to put two and two together, to realize that what you ate 6 hours ago could be impacting how you feel now. That's not an obvious connection for people to make. And that's the connection that I had to start making. But yeah, as you said, it's when we study our glucose levels, so many things fall into place. You know, cravings, hunger hormones, energy, your mitochondria function better. You're actually creating this healthy, sustained energy from within your cells. But when you're on a glucose roller coaster, spike, drop, spike, drop, spike, drop, lots of things can go wrong, from mental health for me to hormones to skin to inflammation in the brain, etc. So it truly is the foundation of living a life in which you feel good in your body and you can actually go and do the things that you want to be doing.
It's also worth noting that I'm not one of those people that like wears a monitoring device, wears an Oura ring. I mean, I've tried them all and I think they're all fun, but I'm not numbers obsessed where I'm tweaking my life to you know, I'm not biohacking. Like none of these things have ever really had long-term impact or value. And this was the one where I was so concerned about spiking my glucose. I actually lost 4 pounds of weight because I wasn't snacking at night anymore. And the way I used to deal with my energy drops was either with coffee or with sugar. I'd have a chocolate bar in the afternoon to get some energy back, which now I'm learning only made life even worse.
Well, it wasn't actually giving you energy, because sugar, we mistake the feeling of sugar for energy, but actually what we feel is dopamine. So when you eat something sweet, like a chocolate or a candy bar or a muffin in the afternoon, you know, you feel a sort of rush in your brain. You go like, whoa, you feel awake. That's dopamine. That's the pleasure molecule in your brain. That is not energy.
Wow.
But we're all confused. Yeah. And it lasts, you know, for several minutes. But then on the inside, your mitochondria, which are actually making energy in your body, they get stressed out by a big influx of sugar, by a big glucose spike. Your mitochondria are meant to receive steady levels of glucose throughout the day in a very balanced way. But when a big spike comes their way, they go on strike. They're like, too much information, cannot deal, need to take a nap. And as a result, they're not making this ATP, this energy effectively for you, and you feel tired. And that leads to chronic fatigue. If you're tired, you keep eating sugar because you think it's going to be good for you, but you're just making the problem worse.
So good. So let's take a step back here. What is glucose? Why do glucose spikes? Why are they unhealthy? What's happening inside our bodies? What actually is it all?
Okay, so glucose is your body's favorite source of energy. Okay, so every single cell in your body is burning glucose for energy. So if you're a listener listening to us, your brain cells right now are burning glucose to make sense of what we're saying. If you make a fist with your hand, the muscles in your hand are going to burn glucose to contract. Every part of your body runs on glucose. And the way that we give this very important molecule to our body is by eating, specifically by eating 2 types of food. Starches, so that's bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, oats, tortillas, and sugars, so anything that tastes sweet, from chocolate to banana. Starches and sugars turn to glucose in our body. Now, here's the trick, right? Do you have a plant at home, Simon? Do you take care of any plants? Okay. You know that your plant needs some water to live, but if you give your plant too much water, what happens?
It dies.
Exactly. The human body is the same. Some glucose, fantastic. Too much glucose, problems start happening. And specifically, when during a meal you give too much glucose to your body, that leads to a glucose spike, which simply means just a lot of glucose arriving at once. And these spikes have consequences. Inflammation, which is one of the biggest drivers of disease in the world. And this can show on your skin as acne, rosacea, psoriasis, but also underpins so many chronic diseases, from heart disease to cancer. So first thing is inflammation. Second thing is glycation. Glycation is a fancy word for aging. The more glucose spikes you have, the faster you age. And this shows on your skin as wrinkles, but also on your insides. Your organs slowly deteriorate. And then last big problem that happens when you have a glucose spike is that your body rushes in to try to get that glucose level back down. And the way it does that is by releasing a hormone called insulin. Insulin grabs all the excess glucose and puts it away in your liver, in your muscles, and in your fat cells. And that's one of the ways you gain fat on your body. And over time, too much insulin in your body leads to type 2 diabetes. And that's just 3 of the things that happen, right? But depending on your medical history, your body, your genetics, you can get a whole range of symptoms from these spikes. For me, it was depersonalization. For somebody else, it could be infertility, right? Glucose spikes are not good for us. And most of us, estimates put it at about 80% of the population. 80% of the population who does not have diabetes are still experiencing these spikes on a daily basis, like you, and we suffer the consequences.
So managing the glucose spikes is a way of obviously reducing all those things. So now let's get into it. How to manage glucose spikes. So one of the big takeaways I learned from you is the order in which we eat.
Yeah.
And so vegetables first, then protein, then starch.
A+. Good
I'm
job.
obsessive now. I'm obsessive. And I noticed the difference immediately. Like I went out to a pasta restaurant with friends. I know what it's going to do to me. I happen to be wearing my glucose monitor at the time. I know exactly what it's going to do. It's going to spike it like crazy. So I ordered a bunch of side vegetables, and I told the waiter to bring it first. So I sat there and ate a bunch of broccoli first, and then I had a huge pasta meal, and I had no spike. It was astonishing. It was amazing to see.
That's amazing. And actually, when you think about it, I'm going to explain why this works in a second, but traditionally in Italy, this is what they do. They have antipasti at the beginning of a meal, which is generally grilled vegetables. So we've known this stuff for a long time, but have lost touch. So the food order thing. So scientists discovered that if you eat the elements of a meal in a specific order, you could cut the glucose spike by up to 75% of the same exact meal, just by changing the order. And as you said, and honestly, good job remembering that, veggies first, proteins and fats second, and carbs and sugars last. And so why does this work? Because I'm going to test you now. You ready?
Yeah.
Because veggies contain a very good substance called
Fiber.
Yes, exactly. So fiber in the veggies is the key here. Good job, Simon. When you have
Very excited that I got that right.
when you have a fiber at the beginning of your meal, this is what happens. It has time to reach your upper intestine before anything else. And there, the fiber deploys itself onto the walls of your upper intestine and creates a sort of protective superhero mesh, right? I like to see fiber as a superwoman there to protect you. Once that mesh is in place, if you have pasta afterwards, pasta contains glucose. Those glucose molecules from the pasta are not going to be able to go through from your upper intestine to your bloodstream as quickly or as much as they would if that fibrous mesh was not there. So you're still getting all the pleasure from the pasta and all the deliciousness, but to your body, it's landing much more softly. Your body's not receiving this big spike in the bloodstream. Rather, that protective fiber shield is slowing down the velocity. And that's why you see a smaller spike when you have the veggie starter. And it is such an easy thing to do. And I don't know if you've noticed it, but it impacts your energy, your cravings for the rest of the day, how you feel. It's just like, it's amazing how quickly glucose levels are able to be modulated by what we do, and then how quickly we feel the benefits.
And one of the reasons I lost weight was, so I went out for dinner and I ordered fish with vegetables and I got onion rings because I like onion rings. But I followed my glucose goddess advice and I had my vegetables first, then I ate my fish, and then I only ended up eating 2 onion rings as opposed to 6 or 7 because I was full. So I had the joy of the onion rings without the excessive amount of fat from the fried food. And so it didn't affect me at all. which was great
Yeah.
from an energy spike to gaining weight.
However, Simon, like even if you had all of the onion rings, right? Even if you didn't change how much you ate, but you just simply changed the order, you would still get a big improvement in your glucose levels and your energy. But yes, one of the great side effects of this is that once you get to the carbs, you don't need as many anymore to get the enjoyment and the satiety because you've had the veggies, proteins, and fats before.
Why do proteins go second? So the veggie, I understand, produces this protective mesh. What does the protein do?
So the protein has an effect on what's called, okay, it's not a very appetizing word. It's called gastric emptying. So it's the speed at which food moves from your stomach to your upper intestine. So protein slows down gastric emptying. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to stack all the stuff that is going to pass through more slowly into your upper intestine. And then at the end, bring in the pasta or the carbs that are going to be slowed down by the fiber and proteins and fats that are there before.
So interesting. Okay, talk to me about the importance or detriment of water. So I've had people tell me not to drink water before my meal because it dilutes the digestive enzymes, blah, blah, blah. So am I allowed to drink water before? Can I drink water during? Do I have to wait to drink water? Like, how does water play?
You have to completely stop drinking water for the rest of your life. That's not, I'm kidding. So there's one small study that I'm going to mention about the water thing. It appears that if you refrain from drinking water while you're eating, the glucose spike of the meal is going to be smaller. So it's better from a glucose standpoint to drink before and after the meal. Why is that? The scientists have a few hypotheses, but it's not totally sure. What I think might be happening is that simply when you're not drinking water as you're eating, you're going to be chewing more and just eating more slowly. So the food is going to arrive more slowly into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
But, the effect is negligible. So I'm a water drinker. I can't stop drinking water while I'm eating. So this is one of the times where I'm like, not for me. You're going to have a much bigger impact by adding a veggie starter or going for a walk after your meal versus removing the water.
And you're French. Where does wine fit in?
Well, my philosophy is that when you're having alcohol, it's what I call a pleasure decision. It's not a health decision. Alcohol is not good for our health. Now we know that. The best amount of alcohol for your health is 0.
Right.
But if you're having alcohol or if you're having like your favorite cake or whatever, it's your birthday, I don't know, have the alcohol that you like best. Don't try to optimize your alcohol consumption for your health. It's a pleasure decision. It's okay to make some decisions for that purpose. If you really want to know which alcohols are best for your health, well, wine actually is one of the best ones. So any color, sparkling or not. And then hard alcohols, tequila, vodka, gin with some soda water and lime. The worst, and again, I'm using air quotes here, the worst alcohols for your glucose levels are beer and cocktails. But if you're going to have a drink, like if you love margaritas, have a margarita. See what I mean?
Sure. Okay. Now, the big one that really upset me when I started to learn about your work was oatmeal.
I'm so sorry.
Because oatmeal, I've always been told, was healthy.
Well, so oats are a grain, right? And grains are full of starch. So if you absolutely love oats and you want to have them in the morning, there's a few things you can do. You can add what I call adding clothing to our carbs. So if you had just naked oats by themselves, the glucose would create a glucose spike very quickly. But if you add clothing, so protein, fat, or fiber, you're going to slow down the speed of arrival of those glucose molecules and reduce the spike. So an easy thing in your oat meal could be adding some protein powder, adding a few scoops of nut butter, for example, some seeds. I don't know how that sounds. You're making a funny face right now. What do you think?
I can do all that.
Yeah.
But it raises the question about the order in which we eat. So like, pizza, I should be eating the cheese and then the bread.
Well, you should. Yes, of course, you could technically. Same thing goes for lasagna or a sandwich, right? You could separate out all the different parts of your meal.
I could have the lettuce, then the turkey, and then the bread.
Yeah, but that's crazy. So don't do that. What you can do in those cases when you have a mixed meal is just add a plate of veggies before you have that mixed dish. So you're going to get the benefits of the fiber without deconstructing your sandwich, right? There's some instances where some hacks are easier to apply than others. We have to be flexible. We have to adapt.
So when I eat vegetables, how long does that lining in the upper intestine last? So for example, can I eat vegetables at home when I'm heading out for dinner where I know there won't be vegetables, like I'm going to
You
a barbecue
can,
or something?
yeah, about 90 minutes. There has been no studies precisely measuring the length, but from what I can gather from how digestion works, it's about 90 minutes. And that's also
Yeah.
what I've observed. And I actually have a lot of readers who do that. For example, it reminds me of the story of this a wonderful Mexican man, Gustavo, and he was a bit embarrassed that he was doing the hacks. So he would have a big head of broccoli at home before going to the steakhouse with his friends, and nobody would know that he had the fiber lining in his intestine. It's cute.
You speak with such passion about something that most people aren't passionate about. Where does that come from? What is the passion?
The passion is behavior change. I am passionate, obsessed with making behavior change easy for people. Easy, sexy, fun. I don't know why. I just really want to help people take that first step. Take that first step to implementing change in their life. That's really my passion. And that's why I developed this concept of the hacks. And that's why I talk about fiber as a superwoman. And I give, names and genders to the molecules, because I want to help people take that first step. So I think I'm just really good at helping people become motivated and see that they can start with easy solutions. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I could apply that to lots of different spaces as well.
I also appreciate your the reality of it. A lot of biohacking and a lot of people who are out there preaching health, it's difficult. It's obsessive.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of discipline. And yours requires some discipline, not much, but you're very reasonable, which is if you want to have chocolate cake, have chocolate cake. Just, it's fine because we're managing the spikes. We're not obsessive about them.
Yes.
And I just appreciate the
life I want
sort
to
of
live.
French way of approaching this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, diets don't work. Diet culture has destroyed women's psychological health for decades. I grew up in France where every single cover of the magazine was like how to lose 15 pounds in 2 days. But I never talk about weight loss these days because it's not about weight loss. It's about feeling good and thriving and going after what you want to go after in your dreams.
Yeah.
But yeah, you asked the why question, which of course makes sense, and it's because of my own health journey, and now I became so passionate about helping people make that change. I'm the one in the friend group who sends the motivational videos to my friends and like forces them, helps them to make change and have realizations and take that step. That's just my energy. It's like you can do it. Even one cherry tomato, one baby carrot before your next meal as your first veggie starter is already amazing. Be proud of yourself. Start anywhere. That's what I love.
Is there someone you've helped that really, or that you've given advice to that stands out? Like someone who like if I ask you, like you say you have a passion for helping people change behavior. Is there someone, it could be a friend or it could be not a friend, but somebody who you've helped that, and it doesn't even have to be glucose related, just that stands out as like, this exemplifies what I'm trying to do in the world, this person?
For my second book, I recruited 4,000 people on Instagram to go through this 4-week method with the 4 most important hacks. And 3 women in that study were able to get pregnant after being told that they were not going to be able to do it naturally by using the glucose hacks, because glucose levels and fertility and sex hormones are so linked. And for me, I was like, wow, like that impact on these women's lives is beyond anything I could have ever imagined or hoped for. So I don't know why that sticks with me. But then, I have the great honor and privilege to receive messages every day from people who've used my work to reverse diabetes, to help their grandmother who has Parkinson's, to get their energy back, to get their period back, to get their acne to die down on their face so they can go outside without feeling self-conscious. It's like there's a whole community of people using this stuff. So no, not one person stands out. Well, I would say, I think I stand out because I was the first person that I helped. And now I feel amazing. Now I can spend a week by myself in an Airbnb across the world for work. Whereas 10 years ago, I could not spend an hour alone because I was having panic attacks about just being alone. So I would say, yeah, my own journey is the most powerful one. And now just all of my readers, it's just amazing.
Is there something that you've done professionally that stands out? Again, glucose related or not, that of all of the work that something specific that you've done, that stands out, that of all of your experiences, all of the projects you worked on were like this one thing, you'd be the happiest person alive?
You mean if something happened?
No, just like something you've been involved in, something, a specific thing, a specific project, or maybe something you wrote or something you did, or just something you've been a part of that really stands out in your memory as like, I want all of my projects to be like that one.
So my best projects, I think
Something specific.
yeah. To be honest, I think it's the new supplement I just launched, and it's not a plug. I'm just saying this because it's a product and a project that I took from start to finish, and I was involved in every single minute decision, from which logistics center we're going to work with, to the padding and the font size on the bottle, to the color of the capsules, to the formulation, to how the cap is going to be embossed, to what I'm going to write in the postcard coming in the mail, like to the website, to the emails. I'm obsessed with consumer experience products, and so having the ability to make that baby from scratch was amazing. Because with books, you don't do it all alone. There's a publisher and they have opinions on the cover and the blah blah, and it's like it's much more of a process. Whereas this, it felt like it just came from the depths of my being, and it's like, this is so much work and so much precision and perfectionism and thoughtfulness that went into this, that I'm so proud of it. It was grueling, but amazing.
Tell me an early specific happy childhood memory.
Playing in the waves on the beach in the south of France with my dad. I was born in the southwest of France on the Atlantic.
Are you thinking about one incident in particular?
Yeah. So we were at the beach and we were in the waves. My dad was holding me and he was teaching me how to do le bouchon, which means like when you go up the wave and down the wave and up the wave and down the wave. And I don't know, I just remember that being so joyful. I've always been scared of water. And I think for me, it was the first time maybe where I felt safe. Yeah. In that space. And then I broke my back jumping off into the water. You know, water and me have a history. So yeah, I think that was my earliest memory of feeling safe in the water.
What I love about that story is that's very much how you describe who you are, which is you're the friend who's sending the motivational videos and things to everybody. And I guess the waves, it's the I'm going to use a big word, the vicissitudes. It's just the ups and downs of life. You know, like the waves that, you know, that if you stand still, you're gonna get hit. You're gonna think everything's fine until the next big wave comes, and then you get, you know, salt water in the face. And you had someone show you how to manage the ups and downs of the waves. And now you in turn are doing that. You are holding us and you are showing us how to manage the ups and downs of life, and you are teaching us these skills. And then we, just like you no longer need your dad, like we learn these skills ourselves, and you are basically become your father. You're guiding us through whether it's professionally through folks like us who are devotees to your work, or just your friends through. I bet you're the one they go to when they're having troubles in their relationships. You're the one they come to for advice when they want to change career, or they're having problems at work or problems with their friends. Like you're the one holding somebody through the ups and downs.
Yeah, I love holding space for people, but, you know, I don't want it to sound like I have everything figured out. I have, you know, I cry all the time. I have emotional ups and downs. I have a great therapist and great friends who also hold me, right? I'm not this like perfect being, but I do love holding space for people and helping them, especially go through the dips, right? Because if you're able to really metabolize the difficult feelings and really get into them, then you're able to come back up. The worst is when you get stuck at the bottom because you're not able to feel the stuff fully, so you never get to the next stage. So I'm good at helping people really be in their feelings. If you come to me and you're crying, I'm not going to tell you don't cry. I'm going to be like, yeah, that's fucking sad, and just stay with you until you're done crying.
And by the way, the way a why works is the thing that you give to the world is also the thing you need the most. And that's the relationship of a why.
That's beautiful.
So, you know, I like how you caveat, I don't have it all figured out. I would imagine you didn't. And I think it's sort of, I understand glucose now because there's so many hacks now. And, you know, the problem with this stuff is it can be overwhelming. And the people who are espousing it, that, you know, when you're a hammer, every problem's a nail. Yeah. And, you know, everybody thinks everything is cured by their thing, you know, which of course is nonsense. I'm sort of skeptical when somebody thinks that their thing is the solution to all the world's ills and all your body's problems, which of course is just not true, you know? And I appreciate that your attitude is more moderated, you know? And
And I will caveat the glucose thing, Simon, because glucose levels are just one window through which to approach better health, right? When you manage your glucose levels, a lot of other things fall into place. You eat more fiber, you eat fewer processed foods, you eat less sugar, you move more, all of these things that we know as common sense, things that everybody should do. But then you need to layer other stuff on. So when I was in my journey, glucose was the first thing I fixed, but then I also started working out and doing exercise I loved. I figured out my sleep routine. I got a therapist. I did EMDR. Glucose is not the answer, but again, because my objective here is actually to just help you make the first step. It's about behavior change. These hacks, to me, are the best place to start.
Yeah.
If you're lost, overwhelmed, sick, and you're like, this is overwhelming, start with my glucose hacks. You're gonna get on the saddle, and then everything's gonna become easier.
Yeah, and this is not the finding the discipline to take a cold, plunge every morning, though we know the benefits of that. I mean, it is not difficult to eat the food that you can order any meal you want.
Yep.
Just eat it in the right order.
Exactly.
Or order the side of, spinach before they eat the hamburger or something, and you can still have the fries, just have them at the end instead of at the beginning. Like the thing that I appreciate is it's a very, very easy thing to do. And as you said, it's sort of a gateway hack, if anything.
Totally. It's gateway behavior change so that you don't feel like you're a failure and you can never stick with anything. These hacks are not a diet. You can adopt them for life and you're going to feel really good about yourself, and they're super easy. And again, you want to start the virtuous cycle. That's the key here. It's getting you in a state where then you can go on to bigger and better things.
Yeah.
These are the first place to start.
What's next for you? I mean, this wasn't, your career is an accident. You set out to help yourself. It's my favorite entrepreneur story, which is the best entrepreneurs find a solution to a problem they struggled with, and it turns out that it works for other people, and they end up building a business around it.
What's the saying? Your best customer is who you used to be.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Well, it's been a crazy 5 years since I started the Instagram account. Now there's books and I have an amazing team, and we have Anti-Spike, we have the Recipe Club, all this stuff. So this year for me, 2024, is a year where I'm trying to make space in my brain so I can think about the next big project, which might be a book. Who knows? And I just launched a big YouTube show, which I loved because I'm obsessed with visuals also. I'm obsessed with fashion and just the aesthetic of things. So I launched this series of 18 episodes where I talk about glucose stuff in fabulous outfits. And it's been amazing. But I'm thinking about the next project. There's going to be lots more to come. I'm still young. I want to do this for many more years. So it's just chapter 1, baby.
Well, Jessie, I'm a fan of chapter 1. You're an absolute delight. Your passion shines through. You are very good at explaining complex things in simple terms that we can understand, which is why we trust you, and why we follow you.
Thank you,
and
Simon.
because you were the first guinea pig.
Yeah.
It's where the passion comes from.
Totally.
So great to meet you. Really a pleasure.
You as well. And can I say something? I loved your book. And so I was so honored when we got the email saying you wanted me on your show. I was like, oh my God, the Simon from Start With Why? Like, yeah, of course I'll be on his podcast. So I'm a fan too. So we're just amongst fans here.
Oh, I love this. Well, by the way, can I offer unsolicited advice for the long-term future?
Yeah.
When I discovered the Start With Why, it was very similar to your story, which is I went through darkness. I was an entrepreneur I had success in the sense that my business survived for 3 years, but I lost my passion for it. And the loss of passion was a dark place for me, because I'm supposed to be happy-go-lucky. And the discovery of the why became profound for me because I realized that what was missing in my life, which is I knew what I did and I knew how I did it, but I didn't know why. And like you, I turned myself into the guinea pig for my own work, not for any other reason, but out of absolute curiosity, because it seemed to have an impact. I wanted to see how far that impact would go. And I always kept looking for things I hadn't done to see if it would work. And it just kept working. It's much like yours. And one of the huge profound shifts I made in my life was I stopped talking about what I did and I started talking about what I believed.
Oh.
And I'm the same idiot the day before as I was the day after. The difference was I wasn't talking about the manner in which I was bringing my cause to life. I started by talking about the cause itself. And one of the results is it gave me flexibility, because if I hadn't done that, even if I launched Start With Why, I'd be the why guy only. And I've been able to write other books about other subjects and do other things, but it's all contained within my cause, which is to inspire people to do the things that inspire them. And I've been able to articulate a vision, a world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning inspired, feel safe wherever they are, and end the day fulfilled by the work that they do, right? And I think the same is true for you, which is glucose is you tripped over it, you know? It's not the passion. It's a mechanism that you found to deliver the passion.
Yeah.
And had it been something else, then you'd be talking about that other thing. But the thing that would be consistent, whether it's this thing or another thing, is the holding space and holding people through the ups and downs so that they can learn and manage it themselves. And so right now, it's all glucose related, but in 10 years, you'll exhaust all the glucose stuff. Other people will copy you, because if there's a market, people will always copy it.
For sure.
There'll be 100 glucose supplements on the market by bigger companies, you know, but the thing that will always remain true and honest is the cause that inspired the obsession with glucose in the first place.
Completely agree. And I think the place I'm going to go with this is taking that passion and that cause and the framework of how to help people actually do stuff. And I love the term you use, self-reliance. I really want to go into the nervous system regulation and mental health space, because I love talking about glucose, but I'm even more passionate about mental health. And I haven't even explored how to get into that yet, right? And it's always been in the back of my mind that glucose was chapter 1, and that I was going to get to different parts of life and the human experience with that same framework and that same cause. And you said it so well, so thank you. And I think my special sauce is turning complicated stuff into easy steps. Yeah. Being really human in the way I deliver things. So it's not a difficult diet that you can fail at. Using visuals. I'm really good with visuals. I'm a very visual person. I think in another life I would have been a graphic designer. And so how can I find a visual way to represent your nervous system state? Because with glucose, it's easy because we have glucose levels. And that's why it's so viral and people get it instantly. I could remove the words from my graphs and people would still get the message. That's how universal it is. But I haven't figured out what that visual is for mental health and nervous system yet. But it's a big quest of mine.
Well, I wish you nothing but Godspeed on your journey, because
thank you, Simon.
I think the work that you do is profound. And I think more importantly than your work is you. As I said before, you care a lot. Some of the people who are putting out, you know, biohacking techniques, they're obsessive and they're doing it themselves. And I think what I love about you is you're not even obsessed about your own stuff. You're more relatable than some of the other people putting out their stuff who are so obsessive about their own work. We can't live to their standard, but I can actually live to your standard. You know, I can actually, like, you make it very achievable. And the fact that you're healthy and happy again after going through some really bad stuff makes it much more attainable to somebody like me, who's not obsessive about some of these things.
Yeah, and you know, I don't always do the hacks. Sometimes it's Sunday morning and I want a 5-pound chocolat and orange juice, and heck, like, if that's what I want, I have it, right? This is lifelong. To me, the hacks are things like brush your teeth, drink enough water, wear sunscreen. If you forget to drink enough water one day, are you going to feel really guilty and ashamed? Of course not. You're just going to drink more water the next day. That's the level at which I want to be operating, sort of a public health, good practices, common sense level. I've just been able to bring it back in a society and in an age where we're so disconnected from these common sense practices that from an ancestral perspective, we've known for centuries are good for us.
If you want to hear more of Jessie's work, check her out on Instagram, YouTube, all the other places. Glucose Goddess, read her books. Just everything she does, stay tuned, because I think we're only seeing the beginning. As you said, this is just chapter 1. So I'll just jump right in. So your work, you're now a thing. Blue zones are now a thing. It's in our vernacular, which is congratulations on that. The fact that people talk about blue zones and it comes from you is pretty cool. You had a very successful Netflix doc. You've got your books. Can I be cynical for just 30 seconds?
Yeah, you can be cynical the whole time.
I like, here's the thing that I think is interesting, and I want you to just react, which is, I live in Los Angeles where people are obsessed with their health. They exercise, they hire nutritionists, they eat right, they take every supplement. And yet these people who live in the blue zones live longer, live happier. And this is where the cynical part comes in. It seems like the lives that they live are just common sense. It's just how I would, if I had no pressures on me, that's how I'd want to live my life. I'd want to eat with my friends. I'd want to walk places. I'd want to have a glass of wine with my meals. You know, what is it? Why is it that the work is so profound when it seems like common sense?
Well, first of all, it's not at all common sense. Only 76% of Americans don't even get 20 minutes of physical activity a day. Until I wrote Blue Zones, nobody understood that there was a connection between your social network and your longevity. You know, we now know that if you're lonely, it shaves 8 years off life expectancy. Nobody was making a connection between having a sense of purpose and longevity. And we know that if you can articulate your sense of purpose, it's worth about 7 years. We spend well over $150 billion a year pursuing health, which is diets and exercise programs. And they're a failure for almost all people, almost all the time. That's common sense in America. The way people are, the populations that are actually achieving this extra 10 years of life expectancy, the big insight that we're largely missing is that longevity ensues. It's not successfully pursued. Common sense is we pursue health. Common sense is we find the right diet program, we find the right exercise program, the right supplement, maybe throw in some longevity hacks, run down to Costa Rica for some stem cells. And that's how we're going to live a long time. That's common sense in America. But what's uncommon sense is this notion of, instead of trying to change our behavior, we change our environment and thereby engineer our unconscious decisions over the long run.
Oh, I love that. And I guess the parts that get left out, because I will leave their names out, but, I know the work of some of the longevity experts. And, the thing that I always find astonishing, and you touched on this, the two things that they rarely, if ever, talk about is friends and purpose. Food, sure. Exercise, sure. But friends and purpose, to your point, are not common sense in America, but are common sense in other places.
Because you know why, Simon? Because you can't make money off of them. They're not they're not easily distilled into a pill or a tablet or something marketers can make money off of. That's why it's not in our vernacular. And the bold-faced names I'm sure we're both thinking about. Nobody's going to refute that, but it's not sexy. But the reality is, in a very evidence-based way, they're far more powerful at delivering a higher life expectancy than any pill or supplement or genetic intervention or stem cell. Right now, things may change, and probably in our lifetime, we'll probably see the change, but not now.
I mean, I've talked about this before, which is there's a paradox to being human, which is every moment of every day, we are both individuals and members of groups. You are you, but you're also a son, a friend, a brother, a father, a member of a team, a member of a church, a member of a company, and these things very often operate in conflict, which is I'm forced to make sometimes small, sometimes big decisions. Do I put myself first at the expense of the group, or do I put the group first at the expense of me? And there's entire schools of thought on one side of the aisle and the other, but the answer is you're both right and you're both wrong. It's a paradox. And the reason I think this is important is, and this is where I think your work is the antidote, which is if you consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Maslow got it wrong because, the most basic thing, he put food and shelter, and he put relationships third on the tiers, third up from the bottom. And yet I've never heard of anyone dying by suicide from being hungry. I've heard of them dying by suicide from being lonely. The mistake he
Yeah.
made, he's only considered us as individuals. He didn't think of us as members of groups. And the reason I think your work is profound is a lot of these diets and exercise things and all these longevity experts is they think of us as individuals. They're making the same mistake as Maslow. And your work is contextualized, which is it considers the individual, but it also considers that we're members of groups. And that's an essential part to being human.
That's right. And you know, when I talk about that, it's our environment that largely determines our health. Our social network is our social environment. There's our built environment, our work environment, our food environment, our social environment. And the Blue Zones approach would be to have you engineering, or at least curating. Like some of those social networks you point out, you can't do anything about. You can't choose. You can't choose your parents.
You can't choose your family.
Yeah, your parents, your family's your family, but you can choose to hang out with people whose idea of recreation is pickleball or gardening or biking, or friends whose idea of recreation is going down to the bar and doing shots, or going to the backyard and barbecuing wieners and hamburgers. And we know that the health behaviors are measurably contagious. So, I would argue probably the most powerful thing you can do to add good years to your life is to recurate those social circles that you have control over. You have control over what job you take. You have a control over who your leisure friends are. You have control over who your best friends, who you spend the most time with are. Yeah. And making those adjustments will have profound and lasting impacts on how long you'll live and how healthy you'll be. And by the way, also how happy you are.
When you had dinner, well, I think you're right, which is all of these things are much happier. I know when I was in New York or when I go to London, I walk 5 to 8 miles a day just living my life. I actually don't think about exercising because I'm just living my life, and I feel healthier. I can eat differently. I don't put on any weight. Sometimes I even lose it, and I'm not doing quote unquote anything